Hi, everyone. Matt Jacobowski here with the next edition of My Side of the Fence, and super pumped to be joined by the former CEO of Virtua and current partner at Miller Devine Leadership Consultants, Rich Miller. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Good, Matt. How are you? Good to
Uh,
talk to you.
yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I always say that when I started in business, you were a larger than life figure that I used to pay to go listen to speak. And now that I've gotten to know you a little bit better over the years, it's never a doubt why you're able to accomplish everything you did. So we're excited to share a little bit more about you today with the listeners.
Thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
You got it. So I have a tradition. I always kick the show off with some rapid fire, some questions to get to know you a little better. So I'm going
Sure.
to start firing away.
Go ahead.
Do you prefer vanilla or chocolate?
Vanilla,
Would you prefer the beach or the mountains?
beach.
And what's your favorite movie?
It's a Wonderful Life.
So I've read your book, so I knew the answer to that. And that is also my favorite movie, is why I asked it. So that's
Yeah, there
something
you
we
go.
have in common.
Great.
But Rich, the purpose of this show is really for me to help humanize the C-suite, right? There's a lot of
Right.
misperceptions and misconceptions about folks like you that have been in the positions you've been. And as they get to know you better, they realize you're just like the rest of us. So I thought you were a great person for this show because I've always felt you have a persona that makes everybody around you feel important and valuable. And as I referenced, I've read your book, and there's a lot of lines in there that stood out to me, and I have a lot of notes. But one I wanted to highlight to kick this off is, I'm going to read it verbatim. You are never too busy or too important to be nice. So can you talk about that a little bit and how you implemented that in your life?
Yeah, I think what I used to do in terms of, first of all, I love being around my employees. I had 10,000 employees, and I just love being around them and talking to them and getting to know them personally. And you know, there's, as I said in the book, you can be nice every day to your employees. You can be nice to people around you. And I also believe, Matt, that what you are in your home life is what you should be at work. If you're a kind, caring person, that should carry over onto the work site. So, I really felt strongly about always giving back to my people and always walking the floors and finding out who they were as people, how many kids they had, what floated their boats, kind of, who, what are the things that they were intrigued about or like to do. So you don't make it about yourself. It's always about the other person that you're talking to. And, they used to mention that, Bill Clinton as a president, you felt like you were the only person in the room. And I wanted to make sure when I talked to people that they were the only person in the room. And I felt that to be very important. And I think we achieved that over the 22 years as a CEO with people, because I still hear it today from former employees. So I think it's very important that you're selfless and you're kind constantly and you're nice constantly to people. The other thing I think I mentioned in the book was, there's not an off day as a CEO. You don't have a down day. You don't have an opportunity to say, oh, this isn't my day and I'm in a bad mood. Don't bother me. That's not on the table. I mean, everybody has issues, and I've learned that in life. And you come in ready, prepared, and open to people. So there is no off day.
Absolutely. So it speaks to your guidepost number two, right? Is take care of people.
Yeah.
So, one challenge sometimes with people, right, especially these days, is as easy as it is to access information and state your opinion, is people can be critics, right? They can look at someone who had to make the decision you did and say, oh, I disagree, or he did this wrong. How would you manage that when you were in your CEO role?
Yeah, and I think I don't mind a critic of decisions. I think that's a good thing, Matt. I think people have to be critical of things like that. But the way I managed it was, especially on the strategy side, which was where I did my work, I would communicate endlessly to my team, my employees, and talk to them about why a decision was reached. And they always had access to me to ask me a question. So if I'm walking the hallways, I would ask them, "What'd you think about this?" And frankly, 98% of the people, even if they disagree with how you went about making a decision, if you talk to them and explain to them why you made it, and even if they still disagree, they respect it. And the key is you're not going to get 100% of the people in an organization to accept every decision you make, because some of them are difficult and you have to make certain decisions, but you want them to respect why you did it. And too many times CEOs don't spend the time telling people why they made decisions. We did this because of this. Now, you may disagree with that, but understand what my thought process was. So I think it's very important for leadership to be able to explain to people why they go ahead and make basically very important decisions for an organization. And I got a lot of buy-in doing that from people, even though I had people tell me, Rich, I may not agree with it, but I appreciate you coming out and telling me why you made the decision. So that's the important part of that.
Yeah, and I, was at a chamber event recently where you and Joe Devine spoke, and my takeaway was something you said about how leaders really need to, and for you it was quite literal, get on the floor with your staff and your team. And it's so funny because you hear about how efficient the world is now because you can meet virtually and this, that, and the other. But you just told me a story. You drove a few hours yesterday to be at an in-person meeting and wear a mask for a long stretch of time because you know the importance of it. So I hope that comes back to reality as the world opens up again.
Yeah, we're people. We're social people. We're social beings. Computer screens can only last so long, and especially in my world in healthcare, that personal contact is very important. And at a time where COVID, Matt, is draining the emotions of our healthcare workers, they need it more than ever now. They need that personal contact. They need to be told they're cared about. And I think that's going to be very important in the recovery of the psyches of a lot of healthcare workers in the next few years.
Yeah, amen. Absolutely. So, Rich, leadership is a word. When you say Rich Miller, leadership comes next, not because it's your title on your book or because it's the new phrase in your new consulting firm, but it's what you really lived your life doing. So was there a time when you realized that that's who I want to be and that's what I want to strive to do?
It's interesting you asked the question, but when I was younger, post my auto accident and then through my recovery, I always wanted to lead something, run something, be a CEO. That was something I always thought about doing. Because again, I think it was my calling to do that, honestly. And I strive to that through my career. When I was in early days in consulting and, I managed people and then I grew into different roles. I always wanted to run an organization. So that was kind of where my head was as a young person, Matt. So when the opportunity came about for me to do it, I took advantage of that opportunity, and back in the 80s and 90s, and led an organization. And I think the results are good, and I've been blessed to do that for 22 years.
Yeah. So you referenced the auto accident, and I think that could help answer that question. Then this next one, what got you into healthcare? Because I know you were never a doctor, you were never a physician, a nurse, right? You always were on the more operational or management side. So tell the listeners a little bit why healthcare became your path.
Well, after I recovered from the auto accident, it was a long recovery. I had a neighbor, Charlie O'Toole. I'll never forget him. He worked at Betty Bacharach Rehab, but down in Pomona. Then it was in Longport. And I was still on a cane and crutches at the time. And he took me with him to work, he saw that I needed to get out of the house and get my mind back to where it needed to be. And I volunteered for him for about a year at Betty Bacharach, and I was a business and finance major. So, I did some work on the bookkeeping side of the business and things of that nature to help him. And eventually he employed me at Betty Bacharach in a controller's role. And that's where my career started. So I really credit him at getting me started. And part of that experience, Matt, was it was a home for Betty Bacharach in Longport was a home for kids with many disabilities, whether it was cystic fibrosis or other disabilities that kids had, and it was and that home was filled with these children. And I attribute this to God's goodness to me. Was I was put in that scenario because when you go through an accident like I did, you kind of tend to feel sorry for yourself a little bit. Why me? I'm 21 years old. Why am I? Why is this happening to me? Then I saw these kids that got up every day in the home with a smile on their face, with all the disabilities that they had, and they would come and talk to you or come and see you, and I would read to them, and I said to myself, "Well, I'm a lucky guy." These poor kids. I look around me, but I also saw the smiles on their face and the warmth that they had as people. And that helped change the direction of my life in a way that I was able to say that I want to do more of this. I think this is a good thing. And from there on, I stayed in healthcare, obviously more on the business side of healthcare, but I was engaged in healthcare starting at that point. So I really credit Charlie for giving me the opportunity in my life to get into healthcare, and then to see the kids early part of my life and to say, you know what, you can do a lot of good by staying in this field and helping people, whether it's your employees or whether it's the kids or whatever it might be. And you learn quickly early in life, Matt, that it's about giving back all the time. How can you give back? How can you help people? And you're always put in a position to help people. It's just how you respond to that and helping people and giving back. So I was put in that position early in life, and I'm blessed that I was able to help people and help kids and help people grow along the way.
So you mentioned earlier, never a day off for a CEO. And I would imagine that throughout your career, because you were a CEO of a health system a lot longer than the average tenure,
right.
I would imagine you had some very, very challenging times and periods where you were second guessing yourself. What did you do to stay calm and focused and let the noise be noise and continue to pursue the ultimate goals?
Yeah, I mean, part of the challenge of that level position is it's pressure packed. I mean, every day there's decisions to be made, there's people to care about, and I guess in some of the decisions when financials are tight and money's tight and you have tough decisions to make, it's a very difficult time, because the one thing I always thought about was how do I best take care of the people that work here? How do I make sure they're happy, they're employed, and they have what they need? And I would never make a decision about people unless I was fully informed and had no other turn to go or no other decision to go. So that was important. I also think it was important for me, I had my wife at home was a great mentor to me. So I was also able to come home and talk to her about issues. And you need a life coach and a work coach to help you along the way, especially in that role, because it's very difficult. And you have to be able to take someone who's not in the work site and bounce things off them and say, what do you think about this? Or what should I do here? What's your thoughts? Without any, without any interference of the work site in their head. So I was able to do that with my wife, and she kind of mentored me along the way of the 22 years and helped me understand things better. And that was very important for me. And I think I wrote that in the book too. So, having that at home, having support at home, and then also, my faith is very important to me, Matt. So prayer to me in my guidepost 5, and the prayer to me is very important, that I was able to lean on my faith and God to support me through difficult times. And there were some tough times. I mean, there were decisions you had to reach that were very difficult ones, and only a CEO could make. So, I mean, you have to have the support systems in place, especially if you want to do the right things as a CEO, if you want to lead properly. I mean, I put my heart and soul into my leadership position. I really did. And it was important. My people were very important to me. So, there were times where, you go to bed at night and you go, you just hope that you're making the right calls for your people. And you were up all night thinking about it. And I used to tell my senior team, if we're making tough budget decisions this year, it better keep you awake at night, because, during budget season, Matt, I used to, I used to bring pictures of people in that, in a department that people might want to cut their positions. And I said, this is the person, and this person has children, and this person has family. Be aware of that. So before you make a final decision, know what you're cutting. You're not cutting a widget, you're cutting somebody's life. And that we got to think about carefully. So those were tough. I mean, the people decisions are always the toughest in my mind in an organization, if you really care about your people and who they are personally. That's important. So that's kind of where my tougher decisions were made, but I also where my support was in helping me along the way.
Well, thanks for sharing that story. That's pretty amazing how you guys handled that. And as I prepared for this, it's funny how our brains aligned. The next topic I had was your faith, and it's interesting. I feel in society today there's pressure to not allow faith to be a part of a discussion with business and other prominent issues. I'm not sure why, but can you share a little bit more about how faith did play an important role in your personal and professional life, and why you think it should still be an important role for leaders today?
Well, to me, my relationship with God is number one. I mean, it's the most important thing that drives me. And I went through an experience, Matt, through this car accident and I was on life support. So I came through an experience that, and honestly, when I talk to people, when they read my book and they come back, it's amazing how many experiences people have in life. I mean, a lot of people have maybe not the experience I had, but a different one that was just as significant in their lives. And I really feel, and I explained this in the book, where I was walking down the aisle in 2017 to give the commencement speech at Mount St. Mary's. And I really felt that God gave me a gift to walk down that aisle, because I didn't attend my graduation in 1974 because I was on life support. But when I walked down that aisle to give the commencement speech and how that happened, it was a gift from God to me to say, thank you. Rich, and I love you and thank you. And this is my gift to you, for all the years that you supported me. And it was funny when I thought about that, how that transpired. And this is how much in my mind God loves us and cares for us. I got a call. I was just a new board member, Matt, on Mount St. Mary's board. And I get a call from Dr. Trainer and says, Rich, I got a problem. I go, what is it? He says, well, our commencement speaker, and I think it was Michael Strahan was supposed to be the commencement speaker. And something happened with Michael. He couldn't attend at the last minute. So Tim goes, can you stand in for him? Now, here I am. I go, how many, did you call 20 other people to do this commencement? And why choose me? But after I thought about that, and over time, it was more or less, I really believe that Tim called me and as a gift to me from God to say, Rich, I want you to do this. And I want you to tell your story in front of the students and your story of faith. And after that commencement speech, I gave that. And actually, I was walking down the aisle and I got chills walking down that aisle. And after I gave the speech, and I thanked the class of 2017 for allowing me to do that, the thousands of people stood up and applauded. So, and to this day, I was playing golf with a fellow that was at that commencement speech, Matt, a few weeks ago at Seaview. And he brought it back up to me. And he says it was one of the best commencement speeches I ever heard, because it came from your heart. And there's always a reason you do things in life, and God always has a reason for you to do things. And another reason, I got a letter from a woman that was at the commencement. I'll never forget this. Mary Yates I'll never forget her name, Mary's name. And she was in the audience with her son was graduating that day. She's in the audience, and I'll move on this story along. But she sent me a letter and said, Rich, I have to tell you the impact you had that day. She said, my husband's in construction. He's been out of work for over a year, and he stopped going to church. And, he's basically been depressed for a year because he can't find work, blah, blah, blah. And she said, when you were done, I turned to him and the tears were streaming down his face, and he's back to work. And he's back to church, and he's doing the things he did a year and a half ago. And she said, I want to thank you. And I said, you don't thank me. God intervened in that, and thank him. But you never know. And part of the story here is, Matt, you never know the impact you have on people. So, God has a plan for all, in my mind, has a plan for all of us. And when you have the opportunity to do something, and it's all about the person next to you, do it and help them, and help them grow, and help them get out of whatever situation you need to help them. And make sure that that's part of your life. So that's how my faith drove me. And as a leader, that faith was always there in my decision making. And I always thought about the person, not the bottom line, not the budget. How did I affect the person? And how did I make the person in the organization better as a person, not as an employee? And that's what makes a great leader in my mind. That's great leadership. If you can do that every day, go to work every day with that mindset, we'd have so many great organizations in the world. And we do have leaders that practice that. But we need every organization to practice that.
Well, thank you. And so I have two questions I finish each
Sure.
show with. So the first is related to partnerships. So when you were a CEO, how did you make decisions on who some of your major vendor partner consultants were?
Well, part of it was, how did they add value to the organization and to our patient care process? So, we partnered with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Penn Medicine, to do some things with us. They were able to further the level of care for our community. And that was important to me. How did we make sure for the things that we could not provide, Matt, I needed people to step in and provide it. And then on the business side, I developed a relationship with General Electric, GE, back in the early 2000s with Jeff Immelt when he was chair. And part of it was, how did I get tools to improve patient care at Virtua? How did I get Six Sigma and Lean toolkit into healthcare to help improve the patient experience? And that's what it was all about. Getting waste out of the system, making sure that we had a direct line of sight to the patient every day. And that's why I went to a partner that gave me the value add that I could use to improve patient care at the organization. So it was all about the patient, all about the employee, and all about our community, that we can enhance patient care at Virtua.
Yeah, just like a lot of your answers, it was about the people.
Yeah.
So my last question, and it'll mean even extra to you, especially if It's a Wonderful Life is your favorite movie, because of the concept of seeing what the world would have been without George Bailey or without Rich Miller.
Right.
But what do you want your legacy to be? When it's all said and done, how do you want people to remember you?
Well, I want people to remember that I helped them, that they, while I was the CEO at Virtua, they grew. They were better when they left Virtua than when they started at Virtua. And that's it. I mean, the bigger stuff that you do, Matt, like we built Voorhees when I was there, we did a merger when I was, all the things along the way are really insignificant to the stories about how people did well. And I had an employee that worked in environmental services that became a master black belt. To me, that's a great story, and she was a phenomenal person. But she couldn't afford an education. So, we gave her an education, we let her grow in the organization, and then she became a master black belt. Those are the things, that's the legacy, the things that you left behind, or you left people in a better place than when you started. So that's all I want to be remembered for. I don't need to be remembered for other things. It's the importance of, I want to be remembered for what I gave back to people and how I helped them. And if that's the legacy, that's a great legacy.
Well, thank you, Rich. This was special, and I want to encourage everybody to pick up this book. There's the principles in it and what you can learn. I don't care if you're in healthcare or any industry. It's a great way to live life. So thank you for leading by example, and thanks for taking some time to join me today.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. It was a great interview, and thank you so much. And good luck. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.